Well, I suppose the question for me really is picking up on this word well-being and what it means, how we can try to achieve it. Do we see it as a priority? I wonder what thoughts you have about that, both in terms of your own country and also more widely. What does well-being mean for you?
That's a good question. I mean, well-being, if you think about it, we take it as granted, that well-being is something that we are striving for. We are actually, well-being and happiness, if you like, is a kind of ultimate goal with everything we do, both, in our personal life and also in the life of communities and countries, if you like. And we are, but we don't always know. We think we know what it means, what well-being means and happiness means. And we know, maybe we know better what it doesn't mean, when we are not happy, when we are not feeling well, and our society is not doing well, it's not good. But we don't not necessarily know how to reach that goal. We have that goal, we don't necessarily know how to reach it. And sometimes we think that there are shortcuts or there are some quick fixes that we can get to reach this goal of ours, well-being and happiness. But there is no such thing as quick fixes or shortcuts. It's hard work. It's hard work, actually. Well-being and happiness. You have to attend to it, and you have to, you need a holistic approach. It's about, both if you take it from an individual level, it's both about your body and your soul, and it's a question how you feed it, and it's about your thoughts. It's about your physical activities. It's about a healthy lifestyle. It's about being healthy and careful what you feed yourself with. It's about attentive. It's about empathy. It's about empathy not only towards others but also yourself. It's I don't know. We tend to define well-being and happiness by the absence of it when it's not there. But you don't necessarily know what it is.
I think you're right. And there are a couple of elements that you speak about there. One is this, how you feel and the material dimension of things. And it does seem to me that for a long time now, we've focused on the material side of it, on things, on money, on material goods. And yet what's quite clear is that that's not the sum total of what we need for well-being. And in fact, sometimes people are prepared to sacrifice their material well-being for the sake of something else that is even more meaningful for them. So I think that's an important thing for us to explore and tease out a little bit. And the other thing that you mentioned is the difference between the well-being of the individual and the well-being of the community. And I do rather think that we have, particularly in the West, perhaps, focused rather more on the individual than on the community. And as individuals, we don't experience well-being on our own. We have to be part of relationships and of a community. So in a way, seeking out the well-being of the individual on their own is always going to be a failure. Because if you don't seek it out in the context of relationships and community, you're not going to find it. Because as human beings, part of the whole business of being a human being is that we are born into relationships.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think, for the past few decades, we have been very much on this individualistic path, if you like. And also, which can be quite dangerous because it kind of feeds into our egos. And I think, and that is my experience, also from politics, that when the ego becomes too big, it becomes very dangerous And it is really important that what can we say, the eco can become so destructive. So I think it is important that we emphasize this, that we need to try to find happiness or well-being in the community. It's not about, we cannot find it just on our own. We always need to find it in interaction with other people. And it's the same in the community as such. And I think, you know, because I was talking about how we define things from the absence of well-being or happiness. And you talked about the economy or let's say, material things. I think, you know, economic growth is not necessarily a precondition for well-being, but the distribution matters. And I think that global or inequality in societies and at global level is immensely destructive, and that is hampering our well-being, our happiness. So if you can have economic growth, and if it's, you know, distributed very unevenly, then that affects our well-being. It's not the economic growth as such, it's the inequality that affects our well-being in a negative manner.
Let me tease that out a little bit, because I'm wondering a little bit about this question of whether it's about inequality or whether it's about unfairness.
Yeah, okay.
Because the truth is, we are always going to be unequal. Now, there's a degree of inequality in recent times which is just extraordinary and undoubtedly pathological. But if we say to people, we want all to be equal, I'm not actually sure that people do. Most people don't say, I'm delighted, my kids are going to be equal to everybody else. That's only satisfactory if you think they're below equality level. If you think they're not, then you actually want them to be better than the others. You don't want to support a football team that is equal to the others. You want to support a football team that's going to be better than the others. So I'm not actually sure that this business of equality of itself is necessarily either realistic or an ambition, unless you're at a very low level. But what does seem to me important, whatever level you're at, is the question of fairness.
Yeah.
And people get very angry and hurt and respond adversely when they feel that whatever the share out has been, that it's simply not fair. And clearly it's not. You know, we can see it's unfair.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. That's actually what hurts people when they experience, that things are maybe distributed very unevenly in a very unfair manner. You know, that is what disturbs people and hurts people. So I can agree. It's about fairness.
This question of distribution that you mentioned is an important one too, because you've said, and I think you're absolutely right, that it's not all about material things. But the way that we've shared things out from a material point of view has very largely been with the instrument of the market. And there are certainly aspects of the market that are very helpful in the distribution of things. But if we take an area that I've been involved with for much of my life, the issue of healthcare, the market's not really very helpful there, because if I'm running a business and there's an aspect of the business that's not prospering, well, I stop that and I do a bit that does prosper. But you can't do that in healthcare. If somebody's not getting better, you don't just say, oh, well, that's not very profitable, I'm not going to do that anymore. You can, no, actually, if somebody's not getting better, I need to pay even more attention to that to see why they're not getting better and what we need to do differently. So it does seem to me that this question of how you do the distribution is a bit more complicated, perhaps, than we've thought in the last few decades, where we thought the market was the answer to everything.
Yes, you're right. But, you know, I think what is important when it comes to well-being, that it is that people have access to access to education, access to healthcare, access to work, access to healthy food, clean water, unpolluted air, this kind of thing that, you need to have access to this. When we think about politics, we rarely use the words like happiness or love and, these emotional words, which are very important, because why are we striving in politics? What is it that we want to achieve in politics, if not, love and happiness?
Yes, you're quite right. These are words, the really, really important words, tend to be more in the spiritual dimension of people's lives. However we understand that. Some understand it in the form of traditional religious approaches to things. Other people interpret it in other ways. But that spirit, of course, spirit of humanity, but that spiritual dimension of things, it seems to me, is really where we touch on these matters of profound importance. And as you say, finding ways of bringing that into the political space is quite a challenge.
It is, but and then we also, we live in worlds that are separated. You have the spiritual world, that are spiritual part of you, and then that's, in a special box. Yeah. And then you have this, a political animal, you put that in another box, and there's no kind of connection between these two boxes.
I think this is a really, really important point that you're making. And it extends to other ways in which we have divided things apart. The physical and the mental. My background is in psychiatry, which of course tries to bring the physical and the mental together, because a psychiatrist is a doctor, so they understand the body, but also working with the psyche, the mind, and the social dimension, the relating with people. And one of the problems, I think, is that some hundreds of years ago, in order to understand this incredibly complicated world that we live in, we split things apart. We separated things so that you could focus on one aspect and really make a bit of progress there. And our science was about breaking things down into fundamental elements and following each of those through. And it was very successful for some hundreds of years. We started to really make things work. But I think we've kind of come to the point now where we realize that there's a limit to the understanding you get from reduction and breaking down. And we need to find ways of bringing these things together so that they enrich each other and we can understand complexity. And in a way, that's quite an exciting, if challenging, place that we've come to, where we realized that that way of working was helpful but insufficient. And now we've got to move to a new way of thinking about things that is more, not just complicated, but complex.
Yeah, exactly. I remember I was once, I used this once in a campaign when I was running. I was a mayor in Reykjavik and I was running in the campaign. And we used this as a slogan, happiness in Reykjavik.
Right.
Yeah. And that was, some people were very, no, we cannot use this, we cannot. And then we thought, okay, what is it all about?
Indeed. And it's quite a challenge for people, as you say. It's easier to criticize the negative than to focus on the development of the positive. And yet that is actually what we want.